Hi students, this is Ms. Tran, and I'd like to begin this lecture by asking, what does the word ideal mean? So I'm sure we've heard this word before, and we apply it in a context where we think of something that's practical for particular situations, or possibly even the idea of perfectionism. So that is what we're going to get into today by taking a look at Homeric Greek ideals in the Odyssey. So looking at the history of how this all came about, we're going to look at a brief biography of who Homer was. And as we know, he was a Greek poet, and actually his authorship and his existence was actually debated. People weren't sure if Homer actually existed, whether it was a man or a woman who both wrote these two epics. But what is known is that he was believed to be blind, and these two epic poems were super important in ancient Greek society. They were the Iliad, and what we're currently reading is the Odyssey. And these epics were super important because they served as manuals in societies for citizens to follow in espousing certain beliefs and cultures, ethics, etiquette about what ancient Greeks needed to strive for a perfect ideal society. Now that's a little background about Homer, and now we're going to get into the details of what these ideals were. So I know that these certain words don't look very familiar to us, and they are in ancient Greek, but we're going to look at each of them in detail. One of them being arete, the next one being xenia, kleos, and ergon. So let's take a look at the first one, and that is virtue. That is known as arete, and it basically refers to being the best that you can be, knowing that you're putting in all your resources, all your best potential, in order to get the right outcome or the outcome that you desire. So this is exemplified by Odysseus when he's battling against Polyphemus, the Cyclops, and he decides to take an olive branch, heat it up, and then twist it into the Cyclops' eye. Now, that was a very symbolic moment for Odysseus because the olive branch actually represented agriculture in ancient Greece at the time. The fact that he heated it up represented the metalwork, and the way that he twisted it into the Cyclops' eyes was representative of the shipbuilding. So these actions that he took against Polyphemus were actually symbolic of the most important technologies at the time, thus demonstrating virtue as a hero. The second one is hospitality, and this is something that we discussed a lot in class, and it's known as treating your guests well or vice versa. Hosts treating the guests well and guests treating their hosts well. This is known as xenia, and this is shown in the case where the Phaeacians, they welcome Odysseus and they bathe him, they feed him, they provide him shelter and food. And the main reason why hospitality is so highly valued is because of the ancient Greek fear of the gods. Now, the gods played a huge role in ancient Greek society because if they did not exhibit these virtues or characteristics of being the ideal person, punishment would be brought upon them. So hospitality was an indication of morality, nobility, generosity, and being a good person as a whole. The third one is ergon, and that is known as hard work. Hard work is exemplified throughout the whole monomyth in Odysseus' journey as a whole. He's going through all these trials and tribulations. The fact that he's gone for 20 years shows that he's striving to fight for his end goal and ultimately to meet his family in Ithaca, which we are getting to as we're reading the story right now. Now take a look at the image. We know that ancient Greece is known for its architecture, its buildings, and the fact that Aragon was highly valued showed that civilization and society would not exist without this hard work that their society put towards in making their culture. The fourth one is glory, and that is kleos. Now, glory isn't just fame, but it also refers to immortalized fame, carrying on a legacy after you die. So notice how what we've been reading so far is very repetitive because it's part of the oral tradition. These stories weren't written down, instead they were retold, passed on from member to member. And what made it memorable were these epithets. And again, epithets are these short tag phrases that the characters attach to the name to make themselves more respected or memorable. So in the case of Odysseus, we have Raider of Cities, or we have the son of Laertes. or even gods such as the goddess Athena. We hear epithets such as the gray-eyed goddess or daughter of Zeus. So, tying into these Greek values, why were they so highly valued? Why were they so important in society? Well, one reason, it's because of the Greek gods. So, we know that there isn't one encompassing god in ancient Greek, but rather many. And having multiple gods refers to being part of a polytheistic society. In Book 1, Zeus himself states, so Zeus is the all-encompassing father god, but he is one of the many gods mentioned. He says, "What a lamentable thing it is that men should blame the gods and regard us as the source of their troubles, when it is their own transgressions which bring them suffering that was not their destiny." So that quote I found is very effective because it encapsulates this whole idea that these virtues were well valued because people needed to uphold respect, hospitality, virtue in society, and fear of living against the Greek gods. And it showed that their society was bonded by these common values, these ideals that kept them together as a whole. So that ends this lecture. I hope it was enjoyable and informative, and thank you.